China's earliest poetry collection does not open with praise for kings. It does not open with prayers for rain. It opens with a man who cannot sleep, turning over the name of a woman he has not yet won. Guan Guan cry the ospreys, on the river's isle. A graceful lady, a gentleman seeks. 3,000 years ago, people wrote longing into a water bird's call. 3,000 years later, we still lose sleep the same way. This book is the Book of Songs, the Shi Jing. It is not a temple textbook. It is songs from river banks, fields, camps, and doorways, where ordinary people turned what ached in the chest into music. Good evening. This is Bedside Book Voice. Tonight we read the Book of Songs. If you are already lying down, dim the light a little. Set the phone farther away. Pull the blanket up. There are 305 poems. The title sounds like an exam. But the parts that suit night listening are the lines that never appear on tests. Missing someone until the chest hurts. Being gone too long and wanting home. Grain ripe and still not enough to eat. Beacon fires lit and no one sure of coming back alive. You don't need to memorize titles. You don't need to memorize airs, odes, and hymns. Close your eyes and follow the voice. If you fall asleep halfway, that is fine too. Let's set a small rule first. Tonight we will not recite all 305 poems. We only want a few images that will not leave you. Water birds calling on a river isle. Reeds white and endless. A girl handing over a red tube. A soldier picking wild greens and counting the days until home. You don't need to become the person who knows the Shi Jing best. Remember that the ancients also longed, also resented, also grew tender. That is enough. What you may carry away are a few reminders about missing, labor, and parting. If you forget them, never mind. If you sleep, let these songs keep you company in your dreams. The Book of Songs is not trying to make you a poet. It wants you, after a long day, to still hear that 3,000 years ago someone else's heartbeat like yours. When the heartbeat matches, the book was not heard in vain. That opening question stays buried for now. Why does a book later crowned as a classic open with longing between a man and a woman? The thread runs from Guan Ju and Jian Jia all the way to Meng, Cai Wei, and Shu Li. Tonight you only need to remember this. The ancients put feeling first, not because they were frivolous, but because to be alive is first to have a heart. We will go slowly. Later you will see airs, odes, and hymns as three kinds of voice, and fu, bai, and xing as three ways of speaking. Confucius and the Book of Songs are tangled together too. He said, without learning the songs, you have nothing to say. In plain speech, without these poems, you cannot even speak well. That story was told by later people, and the tone is a little exaggerated. But think carefully. If an age gathered love songs, complaint songs, and work songs into one volume, it meant those voices deserved to be remembered. Voices worth remembering are voices worth keeping you company as you fall asleep. First, let's know the book. The Book of Songs is China's earliest poetry anthology. It gathers works from early Western Zhou to the mid-spring and autumn period, about 500 years, 305 pieces in all. That is why people also call it the 300 Songs. Most authors are anonymous. Nobles, court musicians, ordinary people singing in the fields. Legend says Zhou had a system of collecting songs, sending people among the folk to gather ballads for the king so he could know the people's mood. Others say Confucius in his later years cut and edited poems into 300. Scholars still argue. You don't need to take sides before sleep. Only remember that these poems were sung, copied, taught as lessons, and finally arrived at our pillows. They were not written in one night. They pile up across 500 years. Do not be frightened first by the word classic in the title. Classic is the rank later ages gave it. After the Han, the songs were honored beside documents, rites, changes, and spring and autumn. But when many of these pieces were first sung, they were only songs. Someone humming while picking mulberry. Someone singing at a banquet toast. Someone singing in a temple rite. Tonight, try to hear them as songs, not as exam questions. Exam questions tighten you. Songs loosen you a little. Later classicists added small prefaces and notes to every poem, like putting an official robe on a song. You may respect the robe. You may also take the robe off and listen again. The two ways of listening need not fight. Tonight, choose the lighter one. The whole book falls into three large parts: airs, odes, and hymns. Airs are mostly folk songs from 15 regions, called the 15 Guofeng, about 160 pieces, richest in ordinary smoke and fire. Odes divide into greater and lesser. Many concern court banquets, political satire, noble life, about 105 pieces. Hymns are temple ritual songs, shan, zhou, and lu, about 40 pieces, most solemn in mood. In plain speech, airs sound like village mouths and riverbanks. Odes sound like halls and banquets. Hymns sound like temples. 3 occasions, 3 tones. The same person might sing differently in different rooms. You only need to recognize a few of the 15 Guofeng names. Zhounan, Shanan, Bei, Yang, Wei, Wang, Zheng, Qi, Wei again, Tang, Qin, Xin, Kuai, Chao, Bin. They roughly map to different states and regions along the middle and lower Yellow River. Zhang airs are often passionate. Xin airs are harder. Bin airs touch the soil. Wei airs run thick with joy and sorrow. You don't need to memorize a map. Only feel that inside one book, accents differ while the heart matters still meet. Longing, complaint, homecoming. Every region has them. Why call them wind, or airs? Han scholars said custom and folkways. You may also hear wind as sound blowing toward you from far away, light, still carrying the smell of earth. In the lesser odes there is also a kind of poem about drinking and friendship that often gets skipped. Fa Mu writes, "The birds cry out seeking a friend's answering call." Birds and people alike need someone to answer once. If you sent a pile of messages by day and no one replied, hearing this line at night may make you feel the ancients knew that emptiness too. Greater odes are more solemn. Lesser odes are more mixed. Banquets, complaints, marches. Mixed is more like life. Life was never one single tune. Among the airs, the most famous are often the softest. Guan Ju opens with a gentleman longing for a graceful lady. Seeking and not finding, waking and sleeping he thinks of her. Long, long, tossing and turning. In plain speech, he cannot get her. He thinks by day and by night. He flips over and cannot sleep. If you have lost sleep over someone, these lines are not far. The poem does not speak of conquest or family rank. It only speaks of wanting, so concrete that even turning in bed is written in. Insomnia 3,000 years ago and insomnia tonight are not so distant. Later readers dressed Guan Ju as virtue of queens and consorts. That is a Confucian way of clothing the poem. On the face of the words, it is still a person who cannot sleep. Keep both readings if you like. Tonight we keep the face of the words first. Beside Guan Ju there is brighter joy. Tao Yao in the Zhou Nan. The peach tree is young and tender, blazing with blossom. This girl goes to her new home. May her household be fitting and fair. The stacked words shout the color out loud. How many wedding blessings have you heard whose bones are still the simple wish, may you live well? It is not complicated. Simple blessings often wear best. Hearing Tao Yao at night is like distant drums somewhere far off that do not disturb you, only set a little gladness gently on the corner of your blanket. Next up comes a poem many people know by heart at the bedside. Jian Jia. Reads pale and pale, white dew turns to frost. The one I mean is somewhere on the water's other side. Reads green, dew freezing into frost. The person I seek is across the water. Upstream the way is hard and long. Downstream she seems to stand in the middle of the stream. Visible, out of reach. This poem has almost no plot. Only distance. Distance itself is the feeling. If you have loved someone one step away, you know this ache. Not total loss. Forever almost. The beauty of Jian Jia is that it never explains who the one is. A lover. An ideal. A life you cannot quite touch. The poem leaves the place for you to fill. Then Jing knew, the quiet girl. A gentle girl waits for me at the city corner. She hides and will not show. I scratch my head in pace. Later she gives a red tube, then a blade of grass, and I find that grass impossibly lovely. Not because grass is precious. Because it is a gift from the beautiful one. In plain speech, it is not you the grass that are fair. It is that a beloved hand gave you. The poem is light, like a young person's joke. Yet it says with perfect accuracy that gifts grow heavy because of who gives them. Have you kept something worthless that you cannot throw away? That is the blade of grass in Jing Nu. There is a more urgent poem too. Biao Yu Mei in the Shao Nan. Plums fall. Perhaps 7/10 remain. You who seek me, come while the day is still lucky. The more plums drop, the tighter the voice. A woman herself urges marriage, frank and lovely. If by day you always say later, the ancients use plums to remind you. Some timing really does fall to the ground. Hearing it before sleep, you don't need to grow anxious. Only feel that frankness can also be a kind of beauty. Shi Jing in the Zhang airs is another kind of waiting. Your blue collar, my lingering heart. Even if I do not go to you, will you not send word? One day unseen feels like 3 months. Later the saying one day apart feels like 3 autumns grew more popular. Its roots sit near here. Cai Wei in the Wang airs writes one day unseen like 3 autumns, a close relative of Shi Jing's impatience. If your phone is also waiting for a late reply, a caller 3,000 years ago has already fretted for you. The airs also hold pain. Meng is a poem of an abandoned wife. She remembers. The man smiled, bringing cloth to trade for silk. Really he came to talk of marriage. She sought him across the Qi River and promised to marry in autumn. After the wedding she rose early and slept late, worked 3 years, and then, once he had what he wanted, he turned rough. Her brothers did not understand her grievance. They even laughed. At the end she says, if you will not think back, then let it end. In plain speech, if you will not remember the old feeling, this love stops here. This is not a shrew's rant. It is settling the accounts of a marriage. Loved, gave, was betrayed, then chose to let go. Hearing it before sleep, you don't need to cry for her. Only remember that the ancients could write a breakup this clean and this hard. Inside Meng there is a line that sounds like an adult waking up. When the mulberry has not fallen, its leaves are glossy. When it falls, they yellow and drop. She uses mulberry leaves to write the before and after of feeling. Early on he was sweet. Later he changed. Mulberry did not harm anyone. People change. If you have known the same person with 2 faces, you understand why she put a plant into her complaint. Inside complaint there is still poetry. That is where the Book of Songs is strong. pain can also be set into rhythm. Alright, enough of love for a moment. Look at labor. Shi Yu in the binaires is like an agricultural calendar. In the 7th month the fire star declines. In the 9th they hand out clothes. The 1st month wind cuts. The 2nd month is bitter cold. Month by month it writes farming, hunting, making clothes, rites. Without coarse cloth, how will we finish the year? You may find it finely chopped. Finely chopped is the truth of days. Heirs do not only write wind, flowers, snow, and moon. They also write calluses on hands and feet. Inside Shi Yu a girl picking mulberry fears being taken away by a noble's son. Beauty and fear share one poem. Reading the Book of Songs, do not only pluck pretty lines. Also hear the force and risk behind them. Fui in the Zhou Nan is lighter. Pick the plantain, pick and pick, we have it. The whole poem almost only changes verbs. Pick, have, gather, strip, tuck into skirt, fill the fold. From picking to coming home laden. No story. Only the motion of hands. Some say it was a women's chorus in the fields, growing happier as they sang. At night it sounds like people far away bending and rising, rising and bending, until the world is briefly only this small task. When small tasks become song, days weigh less. Fa Tan in the way airs sings the unfairness inside labor. Chop chop we cut sandalwood and set it on the riverbank. River water clear and rippling. You neither sow nor reap. How do you take 300 bundles of grain? Sir, you do not hunt. Why do game hang in your courtyard? This is not gentle advice. It is a question. Airs can be soft. They can also be hard. When hard, they sound like an axe on wood, blow after blow, keeping you awake, and also keeping you clear. We're about halfway. Take a breath. One small favor. If tonight's voice has kept you company, tap a like, tap subscribe, as if leaving a lamp on in the night. You don't need to sit up. One finger is enough. Good. Let us go on with the Book of Songs. Next up comes Leaving Home and War. Cai Wei in the Lesser Odes writes a frontier soldier. Pick the ferns, pick the ferns. The ferns are sprouting again. Say return, say return. The year ends again. Hearts burn. Hunger and thirst. Those last lines are famous. When I left, willows clung soft. When I return, rain and snow fly thick. The road is slow. Thirst and hunger. My heart is hurt. No one knows my sorrow. If you have gone far, endured long service, or waited for someone late to return, these 4 lines can pillow a whole night. They raise no slogan. They only set 2 seasons side by side. Soft when leaving. Cold when returning. The years between sit in the blank. Ji Gu in the Bay Airs writes soldiering more broken and more human. In life and death, near and far, we made a vow. I take your hand. We grow old together. Those lines are often lifted out as vows. In the poem they sit inside a soldier missing home and resenting conscription. The vow to grow old together is broken by war drums. As you listen, you may give romance back to romance and cost back to cost. Vows are beautiful because wind may still make them fail. Wui in the Qin airs is another hardness. Who says we have no clothes? I share my robe with you. The king raises troops. I mend my spear. I share the same foe with you. It writes comradeship, short, even, strong. Before sleep you don't need to learn to fight. Only feel that in chaos people lean on together. Same robe, same foe, turns one person's fear into 2 people's shoulders. Xin hardness and Zhang softness side by side show how wide the Book of Songs is. It can speak of love. It can also march. Shu Li in the Wang Airs writes of fallen homeland. Millet grows in rows. Young grain sprouts. I walk slowly. My heart sways. Those who know me say my heart is troubled. Those who do not ask what I still seek. Grain lush. Steps slow. Heart unsteady. Legend says an Eastern Zhou official passed the old capital, saw temples and palaces overgrown with millet, and wrote in grief. That story is later attachment, hard to prove. The feeling in the poem is true. What troubles you, others treat as nothing. This unclear sorrow matches night especially well. Junzi Yui in the Wang Airs is more everyday, closer to the pillow. My lord is away on service. I do not know when he returns. When will he arrive? Chickens settle in the coop. The sun is evening. Sheep and cattle come down. Husband away. Return unknown. Chickens home. Sun down. Herds descending. And the person? Still not back. Animals' return sets off a person's not returning. No big lecture. Only dusk. If you have waited for someone at some dusk, you know why this poem is so short and so long. Short in sentences. Long in waiting. Political satire sits in airs and odes too. Shuo Shu in the way airs compares exploiters to fat rats. Fat rat, do not eat my millet. 3 years I served you. You never looked after me. I swear I will leave you and go to that happy land. Happy land, there I will find my place. Is there a true happy land? The poem does not promise. Wanting to leave is itself a voice. The ancients were not only tender. They could braid anger into lines as easy to remember as children's rhymes, sung down the generations. Xiang Shu in the Yang Airs is blunter. Look, a rat has a hide. A person without manners. A person without manners, why not die? Rats still have skin. People without ritual, why live? The tone is harsh, like spitting in a face. Before sleep you don't need to learn to curse. Only remember that elegance in the Book of Songs is not always mild. Sometimes elegance is saying the ugly thing with a ringing edge. In the Odes, poems like Jian Shan and Jian Jia write disaster, court failure, and people without good fortune. You don't need to enter every historical detail. Only feel that poems can be beautiful and can also be mirrors that show injustice. After the human affairs of airs and odes, touch the hymns lightly. Hymns serve sacrifice. Pace slow. Images solemn. Ancestors, good harvests, merit. Qing Miao and Wei Tian Shi Meng in the Zhou hymns speak with respect, as if people lower their voices so something larger can enter. For modern listeners, hymns are harder to enter than airs. Yet they remind you that one book holds both insomnia and appointment heartbeats and also bowing to heaven, earth, and ancestors. Human voices should have two kinds. One spoken to the beloved. One spoken towards something larger. You don't need to love every hymn line. Knowing they are there makes the book's breadth complete. Shen Niao in the Shang hymn says heaven mandated the dark bird to descend and give birth to Shang. Myth-flavored hymns singing a people's origin into ritual song. Hear it as story. The ancients used birds in heaven to answer where we came from. Airs ask whether the chest hurts tonight. Hymns ask why we still gather as a people. Both questions deserve the same book. In the greater odes there are epic-toned pieces too. Shangmin, Gonglu, Mian. Ancestors of Zhou clearing land, migrating, founding. They are less like pillow heartbeats than like a longer river telling where we came from. Before sleep, you don't need to follow the whole river. Knowing that beyond airs there are long greater ode narratives is enough. Short songs for tonight. Long narratives for origin. 1 book of songs. 2 scales of time. Next come 3 words taught most often and most easily turned into jargon. Fu, by Xing Fu is direct telling, making the matter clear, like Qi Yu writing months, like Meng writing a marriage exchange. Bai is comparison. Fat rats for greedy officials. Locusts for many children. Xing is speaking of something else first to lead into what you mean to sing. First ospreys, then the lady. First reeds, then the one on the water. In plain speech, Xing is like knocking. Knock the outer scene first, then invite your heart matter in. If by day you always rush straight to the point, Xing tells you that sometimes a detour deepens feeling. Confucius said the songs can stimulate, can observe, can gather people, can express resentment. For later summary words. Remember: stimulate, observe, gather, resent. You don't need to turn them into an essay topic. Stimulate is the heartlet. Observe is seeing the world's ways. Gather is sharing language with others. Resent is having a place to set grievance down. Tonight, listening to the Book of Songs, you may need at least 1 or 2 of the 4. Lit by one line, or setting daytime resentment down lightly. Enough. That is already good. The language of the Book of Songs loves short lines and stacked words. Guan guan. Yu yu. E. Fei fei. Stacked words are not decoration. They are memory of sound. Bird call, deer cry, willow softness, dense snow. Repetition nails feeling into the ear. There is also stanza repetition. The same passage sung again with a few words changed, like a folk refrain. Pick ferns, they sprout. Pick ferns, they grow soft. Pick ferns, they grow hard. From sprouting to soft to tough, time walks inside changed words. You may think, why again? Yes. Again and again is song. Night suits this repetition. You don't need to chase plot. Let rhythm rock you toward sleep. One more example of stacked stanzas. Fui in the Zhou Nan advances almost only by changing verbs. Jian Jia in 3 stanzas moves from pale to cool to bright, frost to not yet dry to not yet done. Scenery shifts a little. The one remains on the water's other side. Weather and time change. Out of reach does not. Later lyrics often use this. Roots often return to the 300 songs. You don't need to analyze structure. The ear will learn. Inside repetition there is comfort, and also pain made heavier. Stories about Confucius and the Book of Songs are many. He said of the 300 songs, 1 phrase covers them. No deviant thoughts. That is a Confucian reading, folding feeling into a moral frame. You may have your own reading. No deviant thoughts first means true. True longing, true resentment, true fear, true loyalty. True may not fit later dogma. It fits the human heart. After the Han, classicists often hung praise and blame on every poem. This praises King One. That stings King You. Some readings strain, like forcing an official robe onto a love song. Before sleep, I suggest you hear the pain and sweetness on the face of the words first, then decide whether to wear that robe. Legend, commentary, and the poem itself can sit apart. He also said, without learning the songs you have nothing to say. Without learning the rites you have nothing to stand on. Songs and rites together. One for how to speak. One for how to stand. Spring and autumn diplomacy often recited poems to show intent. At banquets, people did not negotiate directly. They sang a line first. The other side heard what lay outside the words. That was an aristocratic language game, and also evidence that the Book of Songs once served as a shared textbook. Today you don't need to recite poems at a negotiation table. You still need shared sentences for feelings hard to say. What the 300 songs left is not only literature. It is a whole shared vocabulary of the heart. In the Han, doctors of the 5 classics were established. The songs officially became classic. Qi, Lu, and Han schools of songs stood in the academy. Most later vanished. Mao songs alone survived, the text we usually meet. When you hear Mao commentary and Zhang notes, that is this line of transmission. Before sleep you don't need to enter the classicist maze. Remember one sentence. The same song can be sung, and can be turned into a political lesson. Tonight we choose the singing side. Leave the lecturing side for people with daytime strength. The influence of the Book of Songs on later ages is truly hard to overstate. Shu Ci, Han Music Bureau songs, Tang poetry, song lyrics, all carry its shadow. On the water's other side became a byword for missing. Soft willows became the base color of parting. One day unseen like 3 autumns. You still use it. Comparison, stanza return, stacked words in classical poetry often find their old home in the 300 songs. Even Li Bai and Du Fu grew upward with their feet on this grass. You don't need to become a scholar. Only know that some idioms that slip from your mouth stand on 3,000 years of soil. Beyond idioms there are more everyday traces. You say already seeing the gentleman without knowing it comes from wind and rain. You say take your hand without thinking of war drums. You say flee as peaches bloom, really a later play on peach trees young and tender. Language is a river. On its bed lie pebbles from the 300 songs. You don't need to pick every stone up and read the inscription. Stepping on them and knowing the rough places were once poems is already interesting. Thinking of this before sleep may make you a little gentler toward sentences that slip from your own mouth. One more light note on music. These poems were mostly meant for music. Airs, odes, hymns were bound to tunes and occasions. Later the scores were lost. Words remained. What we hear tonight is song without sound. Yet rhythm remains in the text. Mostly 4 characters, pause in 2 and 2, like walking steps. Follow the rhythm with your breath. The body understands before the mind. This is singing, not reading a document. Lost tunes are a pity. Remaining steps can still rock you to sleep. Among farewell poems one is especially soft. Yen Yen in the Bay airs. Swallows fly with uneven wings. This girl goes to marry. I see her far into the wilds. When sight fails, tears fall like rain. Legend ties it to Lady Zhuangjian seeing off a departing wife. History is hard to fix. Feeling is fixed. Seeing off until the person disappears. Have you ever watched someone onto a train or a plane until the figure vanished? That emptiness Yen Yen already wrote. Tenderness in the airs is not only romance. It is also family and friends letting go. One more poem of ordinary waiting. Fengyu in the Zhang airs. Wind and rain cold and dense. Chickens cry without stop. Already seeing you, how could the heart not be calm? Later stanzas the weather grows harsher. Meeting steadies the heart further. Some read it as longing for a gentleman. Some as missing a friend. Reading it as meeting the right person in wild weather also works. If wind and rain are outside your window tonight, these lines sit close. Outside disorder. inside settled by one person. Zai Qi in the Yang years is often linked to Lady Su Mu. Her home stayed in trouble, she wished to return and mourn, and was blocked. The poem has officials trudging in my heart grieving, wanting to appeal to a great state, whom to rely on, where to stop. Historical detail is debated. You don't need to examine it before sleep. Only feel that heirs are not only children's love. They also hold a woman's urgency for home and state. Feeling can be as small as one blade of grass, or as large as a city's survival. If you have heard our reading of the Analects, you remember Confucius weighing rights and humanity. Tonight's book is the storehouse he meant when he said without it you have nothing to say. If you have heard Chu Ci, you feel another romance. Fragrant herbs, beauties, long galloping lines. The Book of Songs is shorter, earthier, closer to soil and river water. If you have heard Chronicles of the Eastern Zhou kingdoms, that book is 500 years of drums and schemes. The Book of Songs is the heartbeat in the gaps between drums of the same age. 3 books stacked. Some fight for cities. Some write poems. Some ask about the cauldron. Some ask where is the one I mean, on the water's other side. One world. 2 ways of living. Back to that opening loop. Why does a classic open with longing? Because whoever compiled the poems, musicians, Confucius, or later copyists, finally affirmed one thing. Before governing, sacrifice, and war, people are animals who long, cry, and sing. Putting Guan Ju first is like putting the heart at the doorway. Before you enter, admit you have a heart. Later ages read it as queenly virtue or political metaphor. That is another layer of clothing. Under the clothing remains a person who cannot sleep. If you also cannot sleep tonight, do not be ashamed. 3,000 years ago the ospreys on the river already called for you. Once the heart is admitted, night is not so long. If you remember only 3 poems, I suggest Guan Ju, teaching that wanting can be open. Jian Jia, teaching the ache of one step away. Cai Wei, teaching parting's softest 2 C's in contrast. 3 poems. 3 temperatures. Heat, cool, warm and cold woven. If you remember only 3 images. River owl birds. Reeds in white dew. Willows in rain snow. Names fade. Images often stay. The charm of the Book of Songs is dense images in short lines. Eyes closed, frames can still pass. What will not pass, keep one frame. One frame beats falling asleep empty-handed. If you can keep 2 more, add Meng and Qiyu. One teaches clearing accounts. One teaches that days are lived by hand. 5 poems make a small bundle. No need for more. Reading is like picking plantain. Fill the fold of your skirt and stop. Do not greed until you cannot walk. Before sleep especially. Carrying 1 bundle suits better than moving a whole field. 3 more words can be nails by the pillow. Xing. See the outer thing first, then enter the heart matter. Yuan, resentment. Fat rats, Meng, Shu Li, resentment with reason and with voice. Gui, return. Say return, the year ends again. Wanting home is ordinary, not weakness. Xing, Yuan, Gui. 3 characters enough to pillow. You don't need to memorize 300. If by day you cannot name a feeling, you may borrow an ancient line. Not to make you elegant. To let you know feeling can be set down, sung out, not trapped in the chest. You may nail 1 more word. Jin, true. The true in no deviant thoughts is not naive ignorance. It is not lying to yourself. Guan Ju's tossing is true. Fat rat's anger is true. Yan Yan's tears are true. True keeps a classic from becoming an empty frame. By day you may wear too many masks. Tonight set the mask on the nightstand. Let the true part sleep a while first. The Book of Songs also holds a tenderness often skipped. Care for kinship, friendship, and banquet joy. Lu Meng in the Lesser Odes. Dear Cry Yu, eating wild greens. I have fine guests. Strike the zither, blow the pipes. Banquet gladness, simple and bright. At night it sounds like someone warming wine next door. Beyond chaos and corvée, people still gather and treat guests well. That goodness also deserves a place in a classic. Chang Di in the Lesser Odes writes brothers. Brothers quarrel inside the walls. Outside they face the same foe together. Ordinary. Useful. The book's temperament can close in one sentence. It lets the highest classic still hear breath from the lowest place. Temples want hymns. Fields want airs. Odes in the middle often praise and resent together. Before sleep you don't need to argue for classicists. Only ask which line tonight sits close to your breath. If close, keep it. If not, let it flow away. The 300 songs never asked you to carry everything. They ask that when you need them, you remember these voices once existed. While voices remain, the heart is less alone. Compared with books of war and books of history, the Book of Songs almost never teaches how to win. It teaches how to feel, and how to say the feeling. Winning is loud. Feeling can be light. A bedtime channel chooses it not because it is most useful, but because it is most like a person. Someone who cannot sleep. Someone who waits for messages. Someone who watches sheep and cattle come down at dusk. Someone who chops sandalwood on a riverbank and asks by what right. Useful books for daytime. Books like People's Suit Lights Out. Someone asks, after hearing the Book of Songs, what use is it for life? My answer is soft. The use is knowing that those useless feelings of yours, the ancients also had, and dared to write them into a volume that could travel 3,000 years. Feelings that have been housed grow less sharp. Sharp things wound. Things that have been sung often become things you can pillow. This is not success study. It is a small class beside the science of sleep. If you insist on one action tip, only this. Scroll less tonight. Leave one line of poetry on the tongue. Hold it as you fall asleep. For how to read it, one more very light suggestion. Take only one line at a time. Tonight, on the water's other side. Tomorrow, soft willows. The day after, take your hand. Do not greed. One line is enough to turn while commuting, washing dishes, or lying awake. Turning and turning, ancient breath joins your breath. That suits bedtime better than swallowing all 15 gufeng at once. You may also put the line on the first row of your phone notes. Not to memorize. So that when you scroll past, something gently bumps you. Before we say goodnight, one small question for you. In the Book of Songs, which line do you most want by the pillow? Guan Guan cry the ospreys. On the water's other side. Or soft willows and flying rain snow? No rush to answer now. After you wake, tell me in the comments. I read every one. If you like nights like this, subscribe and touch the little bell. On the next sleepless night I can still find you. Next time we might read Chu Ci. From short songs on the Yellow River bank to longer, more brilliant herbs and sighs between the rivers, another Chinese romance. Keep the light this dim. Nothing to memorize. Nothing to explain. Tomorrow you still have to be a person. Tonight be the lightest part of being a person, someone lying down. Set today's lines down. Leave tomorrow's exams for tomorrow. The 300 songs were written across 500 years. You only need to remember tonight's few steps. Wanting can be open. Resentment can have a voice. Returning can walk slowly. Birds on the river all will still call. Reeds will still turn white. Willows and rainsnow will still take turns. You only need to lie well and let these frames pass slowly before your eyes. Sleep. Sweet dreams for tonight's you. This is Bedside Book Voice. Good night, see you in the pages.